Okay, hello everyone. My name is John Vinsel. I'm a program manager lead on the App Foundations team. I own a team that owns the packaging and deployment of the Windows 10 applications along with some tooling that goes along with it. Presenting with me today is...
My name is Andy Liu. I'm a program manager on the App Fundamentals team.
Cool. So before we start, just a quick show of hands. How many people here in the audience have at least pilots or deployments of Windows 10 going on in their enterprise? Cool. Very awesome. Coming into Ignite, I was talking to a bunch of my coworkers, and I thought this year is actually a really exciting year for our feature sets in Windows 10 because over the past couple of years, enterprises think to themselves like, hey, I need to get Windows 10 into pilot, I need to get Windows 10 rolled out, but I really just need to focus on it like it's Windows 7, get through the app compat, get the OS out there, and then I can start looking at taking advantage of new features that are out there. So today I'm going to talk through some next generation of packaging and deployment and ways that you can just make app deployment easier in your enterprise with Windows 10 apps. So if we look at the state of app packaging and deployment, you know, it's really just this, I don't know, this horrible thing that we kind of have to go through where we're writing custom MSIs, we're doing these custom actions. Sometimes we're taking somebody else's MSI and rewrapping it so it fits in our environment. We're doing lots of things around custom scripting. You know, I know before I came to Microsoft, I ran an enterprise, and I had a whole team just dedicated to writing scripts to make sure that whenever we deployed any MSI in the environment, it didn't break the configurations that we had out there. And then you have upgrade headaches and, you know, messy uninstalls. There was a session yesterday that my boss, Andrew Klinick, had, and he started off the session with never regret installing an app. And really, when you think about Windows 10 applications, that's what we're here to do, is make sure it's really easy for you guys to install an app, make sure you never regret it, and make sure your system runs fast and performant as you're using Windows 10 applications. So when we talk about Windows 10 applications, we're really talking about the AppX file format. And I like to call them Windows 10 applications because it's not strictly limited to UWP. We also have the desktop bridge that I'll touch on a little bit, and we have some sessions on. But it's ways that you can basically take advantage of our new packaging format structure and get a bunch of optimizations in your app lifecycle management. And the basics of basics is basically it's just a simpler way to package your apps. We've made tooling and the structure of the app very simple so that you don't have to go through a whole bunch of custom wizards to get your app going. Everything you need is all in one AppX file. And the AppX file, at the end of the day, is really just a zip file. If you rename the .appx extension to .zip, you can crack it open with any zip editor and see the contents of your file. So it's not a proprietary format in any means. We have it documented out on the internet. It's just all-inclusive and really easy to use. The AppX manifest declares the app behaviors. So in the past, you'd have to go and put things in the registry to go set like default file extension types. If you wanted to declare things like using the camera, you might have to go and enable something else somewhere. We do all this systematically through what we call our AppX manifest. So when you're building your app package, if you need to do something to the system, you put it in your AppX manifest. That way, when we go and install or uninstall the app, we can actually take the system into a good state or restore it to a previous state when the app is removed. We provide formal versioning and device targeting. So if you're building apps that might be used for multiple devices, you can have an app that's Windows.Universal that you could use across your HoloLens or your desktop, or maybe you just have a HoloLens-only app, and you can actually put that targeting information in the device. So that way, if the AppX makes it down to the device, the intelligence in the targeting will say if it's applicable or not. And then lastly, Windows takes care of all the install behaviors. So from whether you're installing it the first time, you're going to updating it or removing it, the built-in app deployment stack takes care of all the nuances that you need to do. So you don't really have to go write any kind of custom scripts as you're installing these apps. App state's managed by the OS. And then I think I just talked about this a second ago. The desktop bridge is the easiest entry point. So I'm not going to go in a lot into the desktop bridge, but there's a great session later today that we're actually going to talk about taking your existing MSIs and your existing line of business apps and taking the first step. So as I'm talking through all the benefits that you have of this packaging and deployment, the session later today can tell you how to make the steps into the packaging and deployment and then take advantage of the Windows 10 features and really get a better return on investment through your Windows 10 deployments. So deployment basics. A lot of the AppX stack's been around since Windows 8. I get it, not a lot of people deployed Windows 8, I understand. And the original Windows 8 apps were really tablet-centric, and for the most part, didn't always make sense in an enterprise. But the fundamentals of deployment were really good if we continue to improve on those in releases. So I have this little electric outlet as a picture here, and it's actually a great example of how me and the PMs on my team and our devs build the deployment stack, is we want you to think about it as electricity. It's just there, you plug into it, it just works. So when we're thinking about things that we do with the Apex stack, we're really trying to put all the intelligence into the Windows platform and taking that burden off you as the developer or the IT pro and make it really like a fast and reliable deployment. When we're talking about deployment, Windows provides integrity on the app. So one of the cool things that the Apex packaging format does is it has a block map. When we go and we package up the app, we actually take the hashes of the files and store it in a block map. The block map combined with the signing certificate give us a signature for the app. So when you're going and installing that app, we can actually make sure that nothing's been tampered with that app. So if you're hosting it on any kind of external shares or even in your own internal network, we'll make sure that the app that you intended to install will always be there and it hasn't been tampered. So we're giving you a little bit of a security guarantee there. Then we also have policies to limit the trusted sources that you can install from the apps. So there's policies through things like App Locker where you can go and restrict the type of publishers that are allowed to be installed on your devices. So as an IT, you can allow apps from the Windows Store if you'd like, and then maybe just your own enterprise apps, and then no other third-party apps. So we're giving you some of the flexibilities and how you can go deploy within your enterprise. And then likewise, all the apps are installed per user, for the most part, which is a pretty good thing. As your users move around, you can actually just target the app to the user can get it. If they leave the device, you can do an uninstall and clean it up. But we understand there's some cases that you actually want the app to be there for all users of the device. And then on Windows Desktop, our multi-user device system, we actually give you guys, as the IT pros, the ability to provision for all users. So while the app is still installed on a per-user basis, any user that logs onto that box will get the app automatically installed. And you can see great examples of this with things like our mail app that you get with the Windows OS. So it's a great way to make it really easy to deploy either per user or have a device ready so that all the users of the device can take advantage of the deployment. So that's just the core benefits of the packaging and deployment stack. As we think about just Windows 10 app installation in general, there's other benefits that you get from like the client side. So one of the things most people don't know is that we do a lot of disk optimization. So when you're installing apps, whether you're installing multiple apps that share files or you're installing like version-to-version upgrades, we always single instance the file on the device. That means we only keep one copy of a file at any given time on the device. And if multiple apps are referencing it, we just go and hard link it. So we're actually reducing the footprint on the device. We know folks are buying smaller devices nowadays, or at least devices with like smaller main drives because of SSDs. So we want to make sure we're giving you the most bang for your buck when you're deploying apps. We also offer things like resource packs and other componentization that we're going to dive into in a little bit later in these slides. When we're doing app updates, if you're deploying over the network, whether it's coming from the Windows Store, from UNC, or like an HTTP location, we're doing differential updates. So if you have a DLL in your app package that's changed, we're only downloading the updates in 64K chunks. So you don't have to redeploy the entire app down to the device. The deployment platform's smart enough to go and know the changes at a 64K level, and then we go and just download those changes and merge them into the files. So really reducing the bandwidth that your devices need. So in areas where you might have like constricted network, you get great benefits of just using the packaging format. I talked a little bit ago about like the signature and the block map. We're always looking at the runtime state of the app. So Windows is constantly checking the Windows app folder and doing comparison on if ACLs have been changed or if, in general, files have been injected or tampered in the Windows apps folder. And if any of that ever happens, we actually turn the app state into a tampered state and prevent the app from launching. So if for some reason some sort of malware made it on your system and tried to tamper with one of your apps, the OS is smart enough to know and to flip that into tampered, and then you can just go and redeploy the app and fix it. Likewise, if you go and redeploy that app, it'll take advantage of the differential updates, and it'll just fix the files that are corrupted. So again, just tying into all these benefits that you'll see on the client side of your app deployment. We're doing streaming installations. We're going to kind of dive into that for a few slides a little bit later. Easy componentization, again, another couple sections we'll talk about. Sorry. And then mostly, the best part is the clean uninstall. So in the past, you deploy an MSI. App data could be kind of littered over the system. There's a bunch of registry keys left behind. when you install a .apex file or a Windows 10 app, when we go and install it, we make sure nothing's left behind. We clear up the app data folder. We clear up the install state. So keeping your PCs clean and more pristine for your end users. So we have multiple ways that you guys can take advantage of deploying apps. And I'll walk through these over the next couple slides. First off, there's just easy internal enterprise distribution. So we know not everyone wants to leverage cloud services or go through our store. You might have some offline things, or you just have some proprietary IP. We'll walk through those. The Microsoft Store for Business, and then some management tool integration. So from an internal distribution, we actually have a ton of different ways that IT pros or developers can take advantage of deploying apps in their enterprise. The first way is just the easy PowerShell. We just have the add, remove, and get for the app. So you can add Apex package, get Apex package for inventory, or do a remove Apex package and take advantage of that. Likewise, starting in the creators update, we improved upon a lot of the commandlets that are there. And if you just want to completely clean an app off a system, I talked about that provisioning for all users, or there might be multiple users that have logged into a device that don't go back to it. We added a new feature to delete for all users or remove for all users. So we have a lot of extensibility into in our PowerShell commandlets. We have this other concept called Hub Apps. It's really just a UWP that lets you take advantage of the deployment technology through the package management and the package query APIs. So you can actually write your own, we call them Hub Apps, your own app that can talk to like a web service and go and install and uninstall apps on your device. So if you're hosting apps within your enterprise, you can create your own little mini store for your enterprise, and you can use that Hub app for deployment. Mobile device management, it's another great way to get apps onto your device. You can leverage things like SCCM or Intune, and there's the built-in management stack that tools like that or other third-party vendors can hook into, making it really easy. Again, not having you guys have to build custom scripts for all this, but just tie it right into the native deployment stack. Also HTTP, I'm going to walk through a demo of that in a minute. And then starting in the fall creators update, which should be released shortly, we'll also be introducing auto updates for apps. So show of hands, how many people are using Click Once? Yeah, so if you're using Click Once, it's similar type of concept to allowing you to connect to a remote share and then use a config file to do an update. We provided auto updating for the .apex file starting in the fall creators update. We're going to add a couple more features through the next couple releases to be better than, so first off comparative to, and then better than Click Once, really making it easy for no matter how you're distributing within your enterprise and getting your apps deployed. So the app updates, forgot I have this slide. The app updates is basically an easy way for you within your enterprise to auto update apps. First off, developer just declares an intent in metadata. It's really just an XML file that you host on a share. You put your Apex file on a share. You have a metadata file that talks about what you want to go do. You go and put information about what app you want to install, the versioning and all that. And then in the future, we'll have some different controls about blocking and non-blocking updates that will be provided in there. And then from the app deployment stack, we'll periodically go check for that config file, and we'll see if there's updates to it. And when that config file changes, we'll go ahead and install the new version of the Apex. And like I said, it's hosted on HTTP, or if it's on a UNC, which most of these cases it would be, we'll do those differential downloads. So if you're an IT pro or even a developer that's helping people self-host apps, you can just drop your Apex on a share, drop this XML. You give them a reference to the XML to click to install. The app will silently install, and then from that point on, it'll just keep updating itself at a regular cadence as you update the app on the share and update the metadata. So I'm going to walk through a quick demo here that kind of shows us like how the install from web works. Okay, so here I have just a PC running the fall creators update. And then I have a link to just an Azure site I have up here that has what we call our Hub app. So maybe I'm an employee at Contoso. My IT pro says, hey, day one, I just need you to go and install this app. I can just go to this cool website here. I can click install my Hub app. What you'll see here is it launches the app installer. This is an app that we put in starting in the Windows 10 anniversary update to make it really easy to just click to install .apex files. So apparently I forgot to uninstall it for this demo, which is fine. So it was already installed, detected there, and it told me it was there. So I'll just actually jump ahead here. I have another version of this out there right now that is an update for it. So I'll go ahead and click that as well. Again, it launches my app installer app. You can see now that the button says to update. It knows that it's trying to install a new version in the app. It's letting the user know that there's an update ready for it. So it'll just go, it'll connect to the server, it'll download the block map. I'm on my own Azure instance, so I think it's a little slow here. So we'll just give it a quick second. And then while this is installing, it's basically, it's just connecting to my Azure instance and then downloading the block map, determining what it needs to update, and then we should just see a really quick update of the app. And there we go. And now my app's been updated. And it shows me a newer version of the app. So really easy way to host over HTTP and install your app. So how did I kind of make this all possible? So I packaged my AppX up just using the built-in Windows 10 packaging tools in the SDK. If you're using Visual Studio, Visual Studio will do all the packaging for you. And then when I hosted it on my website, I pointed it to this custom URI, and basically the custom URI on my website, regardless of the browser that I'm using, actually sends me to the app installer. So if I'm hosting on my website, I'm using either Internet Explorer, Edge, or any kind of other browser that you might be using in your enterprise, the app installer will work with that custom URI. It's registered for it, so that users can just go and click to install. And then on the Windows 10 Fall Creators Update, we'll go in dynamically install from the web. Now, I talk a little bit about this being a new feature in the Fall Creators Update, which is great, but it's going to be a little while before folks get their enterprises moved on to that. So one of the neat things, about the app installer in general is it's a store app. So a lot of the cool stuff that we're doing in later releases, we're actually able to try to bring the experiences down level. So if you're running, I believe it's 1607 or 1703, the anniversary update or the creators update, there'll actually be a new version of the app installer that'll also allow you to host those web links and click to install. The experience will be slightly different. It'll download the AppX into the downloads folder and then auto kick off the install because we go through Smart Screen differently to help protect the integrity of the system. But you don't have to wait till the Fall Creators Update to actually do web hosting of your AppX. So as long as you get an update to that app installer app, which you can get from the store or the Microsoft Store for Business, you'll be able to take advantage of the new features that we're building. Click. Sorry about that. There we go. And we have some detailed blogs that I just put out today that actually walk you through end-to-end about getting these AppXs hosted on a website and through the auto update procedure. So I know it's kind of a lot of information, but we did some great walkthroughs to kind of help you guys get going on these. So when we think about enterprise apps, specifically when you're deploying within your own enterprise, these are your apps, so we want them to be your rules. In the past, we used to put sideloading policies in place and make you buy custom certificates. We got the feedback. We've been really working hard to make sure that app deployment in your enterprise has no barriers for you when you're hosting things locally. So as long as you have a trusted authority, and that could be your own enterprise CA, your apps will install. You can just turn on sideloading mode from either a group policy or from the UI. We give you as many distribution methods as we think are feasible for us. So you can build your own UWP app. You can use PowerShell scripts. There's native APIs. We have MDM support. We give you access to more capabilities. So when you submit an app to the store, there's some restricted capabilities that you need to be authorized for. Because for general consumer users, like you shouldn't be able to query every app that's installed on a PC. But in an enterprise, you probably want to know what's going on with your devices. So a lot of these capabilities are just granted to you when you're using the non-store distribution methods, so you don't have to go and get any kind of special authorization for these. The WAC, we highly recommend that you self-verify for the WAC, but there's no blocking you deploying because you're not going through any kind of ingestion system that would block you. And then, like I said, we're continuing to grow the platform and do things like automatic updates that are launching in the fall creators update. So switching gears over, I talked a lot about how you can actually host internally your own apps, but we do offer the Microsoft Store for Business, which can take some of the deployment challenges away from you, right? The deployment platform is really easy to use, but what if you didn't actually have to host these, sign these, or really distribute? What if I can just move all that targeting into something like the Store app? So we offer the Microsoft Store for Business and Education, which gives you really one-stop shopping for your enterprise. The nice thing about the Store for Business is, as an enterprise customer, when you sign up for the Store for Business, you get your own catalog that you get to curate. You get access to all the apps that are part of the Windows Store and any of your own apps that you want to ingest. Based on that, you take the apps that you want to show from the Windows Store, plus your own enterprise apps, bring those two together, and that becomes your private catalog. So you create your own catalog instance of what you want to offer to your users, so you don't have to show them things like the consumer games that are out there, and you can focus on the productivity type of apps that you want your users to see. When you acquire these apps, you can require them in bulk. I can buy 1,000 for my 1,000-person org. I can assign them out as I want. If people leave the company or change roles, I can reassign those licenses. So unlike the consumer store where it's tied one-to-one to your MSA, when you're using the enterprise store, we give you the flexibility to reassign licenses out. We allow you to distribute in many different ways. You can go distribute within the store. So you can create a custom tab within the store that's just for your enterprise. So you'd see like a Contoso tab. And then your users can take advantage of the store app that they might already know and love. Or you can sync all that metadata to your management tool. And your management tool can do the distribution for you. So if you're deploying other things, and maybe you're doing some cross-plat stuff, you might have an enterprise management tool like Intune, and you can kind of bring those two things together, making it really easy to just kind of manage your devices and distribute in one place. And then I just kind of talked through all these already. Cool. So I touched on a lot of this already. With Windows 10, we give you out-of-box manageability for the MDM support. We make it really easy to add, remove, update, inventory, everything that's going on with your devices. We also tie into device provisioning. I think there's a session here this week, which is really about how you can quickly provision devices that you get through this tool called the Windows Configuration Designer. It's a way that you can go in as you're taking PCs out of the boxes. I'll use the term retrofit, which is horribly wrong, but quickly adjust the configuration to the way your enterprise runs. And then, like I talked about, if you're going to deploy your own line of business apps, we made it really easy with either MDM or group policies to enable or disable sideloading or developer unlock. We know there's a mix and match. Sometimes you want things sideloaded, sometimes you don't. And in some cases, you have developers. You want them to enable the developer mode, which is a richer set of things if you're building and debugging apps. But not all your users need that, so you can go and block that for the users that don't. So that was kind of all the basics of .appx and Windows 10 apps from the deployment aspect. And in the past, when we kind of talked about AppX, it was one file. So if you built an app, like our mail app is a great one. It's actually mail, people, and calendar, and it's just one big .appx package. But as we were talking to developers, we knew that probably wasn't a good thing long term. They don't want apps to be monolithic. They want flexibility in the apps. Feedback from our developers is, how can I get my apps deployed to users quickly? Maybe some of the components not all the users need. I want to be able to sometimes sell. So if you're building for other enterprises, you can have a core app, and then you want to sell an additional module on top of that. I want multiple apps to function as one. What does that kind of mean? Well, think about Office. Office is shipping in the store right now on Windows 10s, but you don't want that as just one big AppX file. In fact, you want Word, PowerPoint, Visio, Excel, all those to be individual apps. We've built now a new app model that we're going to go into detail of that allows you to actually give you that granularity level where the apps function and run as their one large app, but it gives you the distribution separation of allowing to only deploy some apps to some users or a larger set to other users. And then likewise, just sometimes you just don't want all the components there. Like, I'm a manager, Andy works with me, but like there's HR stuff that I'll want to, maybe give him a bonus at the end of the year. Well, I don't need to deploy all those modules to him when we're using the HR app. So we'll kind of go through an example of how that works. So I've been talking a lot. I kind of want to hand over to Andy because this is his first time presenting, so it'll be fun.
Thank you, John. So all of this feedback leads us to more ways in which you can componentize your apps. So instead of always delivering the entirety of your app to your users, you can use things like resource packages and optional packages to separate your apps into different parts and make packaging and deployment more efficient. So the first way in which you can componentize your apps is by using resource packs. So let's say that you have the AppX package for your app here. Within it, you have your 64-bit executables and DLLs. You also have your English, Spanish, and French strings and files so that you can localize your app for users in different countries. And you also have your scale 100 and scale 200 files so that you can target the different screens that your users have. Now, if we pull out each of these parts separately and package them into their own AppXs, what you see here in the green are what we call resource packs. So resource packs are just AppX packages that contain either language-specific or scale-specific files. Your 64-bit files would all be packaged into what we call the main package. This package must exist for your app to work. Now, you might be wondering how you can distribute your app after it's been separated into multiple AppX packages. Well, we would wrap your packages into what we call the AppX bundle. So with the AppX bundle, you can still distribute your app as a single entity. What happens when a user downloads your AppX bundle is that first, the platform will see that the main package must be installed for your app to work. So the main package will be downloaded. Then the platform will see that since the user is on a Spanish device, only the Spanish resource pack will be downloaded out of the other language-specific resource packs. Then the platform will see that the user is on a device with a high DPI screen, so only the scale 200 resource pack will be downloaded. So what this gets us is that the user doesn't have to download every single AppX within the AppX bundle. Only the resource packs that are applicable to the user's device will be downloaded. This allows us to save time for the user to download the app, and it also minimizes the disk space on the user's device, leading us to a happy user.
So what's really cool about this is Andy walked through where you might actually have one .appx file that contained all your languages. I know at points in times I also talked to enterprise customers, and one of the customers I had talked to said they had 15,000 apps. It wasn't actually 15,000 unique apps per se where it had different functionality. They had 10 of every single version of an app because they had a localized independent version. So where you can also have one big AppX or one MSI today with all languages in there, you might be actually having 10 MSIs, each one for a different language. And this gives you a chance to go and consolidate your catalog, making it really easy for distribution. And then as people move regions or use different languages, the OS is smart enough to go and just do the right things for it. Again, taking advantage of that intelligent delivery that I talked about earlier, and only downloading the bits that the users actually need on the device.
So just to summarize, resource packs are just AppX packages that contains either localized strings and files or scale-related images. And best of all, if you're using Visual Studio to create your app, Visual Studio can automatically create resource packs for you. All you need to do is use specific keywords where you're naming your resources, such as using EN for English, FR for French, and scale 100 for your scale 100 images. Within your app's code, all you need to do is use the MRT APIs. for you to automatically load strings and files from the most applicable resource pack. So you don't have to manually go through and see which resource packs are present and which resource pack is best for a user. All of this is handled automatically through the MRT APIs. So the next way in which you can componentize your apps is by using app services. App services lets your apps communicate with each other. So if you have two apps that both need to exchange information with one another, they can both implement an app service component so that the app-to-app messaging is done in the background. This allows the user to stay within the context of the app that they're using, and while the app-to-app messaging is taking place, the user doesn't have to switch between the two apps. App services can run as a background process, or it can also run in the same process as its host app, making it more performant. App services can also be app extensions.
So real quick on the app services, what's kind of cool about an app service is I, as a developer, can go write an app service that multiple people can take advantage of. So it's not directly tied one-to-one with your app. You can write a generic app service that other people can interact with. So it's a great way for like a third-party add-on to kind of run. And I think extensions, which is going to hop in, also is that same type of thing. Both of these are ways that both you as a first-party developer and developer within your enterprise can use, or you can actually leverage third-party resources, and there's a level of trust mechanism between the two.
Yeah. So extensions are another way in which you can componentize your app. So you can let other apps add functionality or enhance the experience for your app. Your app can declare that it would be a host for a certain type of extensions, and other apps would declare that they're an extension for your host app. The host app also gets to control all of its extensions. So this means that it can decide if and when to uninstall certain extensions. It can also get updates, notifications of updates or installs of new extensions. And extensions themselves are also separate AppX packages, meaning that they can be run independently of the host app. So you can think of an extension as a package that can share content with another package, but it can also surface its own user interface so that the user can change the settings for that extension.
So if you want to actually see a great example of extensions in action, Edge implemented extensions back in the anniversary update. So Microsoft Edge, if you just go into the dots for like the features and settings, you can see add an extension, and then you can go add a series of different extensions from our store, and then enable and disable them from within Edge. So it's a great way to kind of see how that works in action.
Yep. So extensions can either share content with the host app, and this content can either be static images, text files, or JavaScript, which is what Edge extensions are. And extensions can also be app services. So your host app can pass information to the app service extension. The app service can run some code, process the information, and then return the results back to your app. So extensions are just an easy way in which you can let third parties add functionality and enhance the experience for your app. The next way in which you can componentize your app is by using streaming installation. So with a traditional app install, your users would download your app either from the store or from the web. The download would start, and then the user would be able to launch your app when the download has been completed. However, this can take anywhere from minutes to hours, depending on the app size and the user's internet speed. And during this time, your user might just fall asleep or forget about your app entirely, which you don't want. You want to be able to engage with your users as fast as possible, and that's where streaming install comes in. Streaming install will let your users launch the app before they're fully downloaded, letting you engage with your users within seconds instead of the minutes or hours it would take with a traditional app install. So how would you implement streaming install with your app? Well, you would do that by dividing your app into different content groups. Content groups are just a term we use to describe a set of files that are within your app. You would first define what your required content group is. The required content group will contain all of the files that are necessary for your app to be installed, launched, and it should also include the files that are necessary for the base functionality of your app to work. So you can think of the required group to contain your executables, your logos, and any setup and config files you might need. The rest of your app will be divided into different automatic content groups. So what happens when a user downloads your streaming app is that the required content group will be downloaded first. At this point, the app is installed and it can be launched by the user. When the user is using your app and while the app is running, the automatic content groups will be downloaded automatically in the background. Now let's dive into a demo of streaming install. So here we have our Campus Maps app. This app just displays the Microsoft campus, the different sections of it, and you can click on a building to see an image of it. The total size of the Campus Maps app is around 1.5 gigabytes, but the required content group is only a few megabytes. So once the download gets started here, we should be able to launch the app in a few seconds. The app also has 3 other automatic content groups, and those 3 groups correlate to the 3 sections here. So once we're able to launch the app, we're immediately brought to the comments section, and we're able to click on the comments to see a picture of it. This functionality is all part of the required content group.
So what if I want to go to West Campus?
Yeah, so if we click on North Campus, we see that this section is still being downloaded. And if we click on the West Campus section here, we see that this content group hasn't started downloading yet. However, since the app knows that we've navigated to this section and we're waiting for this section to light up, the app can reprioritize the downloading of the content groups so that the West Campus content group can download first before the other content groups finish. And
So
there
what
it
you're
goes.
saying right now is now it went back to North and North continues downloading?
Yeah.
Cool.
North actually already finished. But if we come back to East, we see that West Campus did download before the East Campus content group. So,
Very cool.
now you might be wondering how you can define content groups for your streaming app. You would do that with what we call the content group map. So in this file, you would define all of the content groups within your app and all of the files each content group contains. The order in which you define the content groups here is the default order in which content groups will be downloaded. However, as you just saw with the demo, the app can dynamically reprioritize the downloading of the content groups depending on the user's interaction with it. You can define either static content or native code to be part of your automatic content groups, and the existence of the content group map will identify your app as streamable. So you can think of this file similarly to the AppX manifest that will live in the root of your package. We also have tooling available in Visual Studio and Make AppX to help you create and validate the content group map. And of course, using the content group map and streaming in general requires the Windows 10 Creators Update. And now I'll pass it back to John to talk about optional packages.
Thanks, Andy. So that was a great couple ways that we talked about how you can split up your app and componentize it to either make distribution easier or maybe even more lightweight. So app services, a great way to kind of have an out-of-band service that you can go interact with your app. App extensions, awesome way for either yourself or third parties to go and extend your app. I like to think of things like Office add-ins as great third-party add-ons to an app. The extensions model really allows for that type of ecosystem to get built with the Windows 10 apps, but keeping your system clean and safe while we're doing it. And then streaming install is just a great way to go and engage faster with your users. So if you're having some of these large apps, like a campus map, which I know a few enterprises have, it's a lot of data to come down. If I need to get to a meeting, it'd be great to just get in there and be able to see where I need to go right away. So the last thing we're going to talk about here is optional packages. And I think this is one of the most exciting features when we talk about componentizing your app, because it's really a way that you, as a developer, can go and create different experiences for different users without having to go create different apps. So what is an optional package? It's a way to componentize. It says UWP app, but it's really your Windows 10 application. So if you're using UWP or if you're using the desktop bridge, you can go and use optional packages for that. You can do separate licensing and acquisition from the main app. The licensing might not be as important for enterprise developers, but if you're shipping an app in the store, it's a way for you to actually sell the optional packages and generate extra revenue. So you don't have to do it through in-app purchase type stuff. You can actually make this a different licensable, monetizable unit. Packages can be content only or run native code. I think that's really important because not in all the instances that you're doing do you need just content. If I use the perfect example for optional packages, which is Microsoft Office, every one of those apps needs to run code. So being able to run code or have the content option is just goodness in general. And then for all the optional packages, they're all anchored to what we call the main app. So there's one common runtime for the apps, and that always has to be deployed. And that's essentially the identity of the app that's going to run all these other apps. And then lastly, it inherits main app capabilities. So as you're building out your optional package sets, the capabilities are defined in the main app, and any of the optional packages would share the capabilities. So you don't go and add capabilities just for one of the optional packages. You declare it for the entire set, and those capabilities are used across the board. So I've talked a lot about it, but it'd probably be good to visually walk through what an optional package is. So I'm going to walk through two scenarios. I'm going to walk through extending an optional package without code. Maybe you're just doing things like templates or random content. And then I'm going to walk through it with code, and I'm going to talk about the nuance of what you need to do when you're running code versus not running code. So we have our HR app here. It's great. Talked a little bit about that. It's my main app or my base app. In this case, I just want to run an approvals pack. It's really just content or JavaScript. It's not really running code. So I go and add the code pack for approvals. When they're both installed, they're sharing the same identity. So when the app is running within and accessing all the runtimes, it's really just the HR app's identity. It's not like it's two different apps installed. From a packaging perspective and a deployment perspective, your system will see two packages. But from the runtime, it's really just one app. And if it's a UWP, it runs in the same container. And in this case, there's actually no version dependency. So if you're not doing content, I'm going to talk about some version dependencies when we're running code. You can go and rev these independently and update them as you see fit. When you're running code, I'll walk through it, we want to be a little bit more strict and make sure that you're not misaligning two different versions that are going to allow your app to crash. And then lastly, for both optional packages running code and not code, they can be multi-publisher. So maybe you're working with another enterprise or something, and they're building packages for you, and they're run under a different publisher. They don't need to publish on behalf of you. You guys can actually co-author together and build an app that shares one identity. What's kind of nice about this is the merger acquisition scenario, where you might have picked up another company's app, and then you want to roll that into your main app. You can actually reuse some of those assets. So that's extending optional packages with code. Real simple, without code. But what if I want to do code? Because I actually think that's the funner one. How can I go add feature functionality to my app based on different users and what their needs are? So we'll take that same optional package. It's all running under HR app's identity. But now I'm going to go and put the employees pack, which runs code. So I've gone and deployed this. And as you can see, the employees pack is actually versioned. Version 1.0 for the HR app, version 1.0 for the employees pack. When you declare the relationship in your AppX manifest, which is where all these are declared, you actually declare the version that the two need to run together. And what's important about this is when we go to install or update the app, we'll only bring the entire set together in sync and update, or we'll roll back and fail if they're not there. So this will allow you to, this will prevent you from getting out of alignment and trying to reference code that might make your app crash. So in the case where I want to go do an update, and you can see the little bit of binding I have around those two apps, I can go and update my apps, and I can take my HR app to version 2.0, but maybe my employee pack's just got like some bug fixes, and I want to keep the versioning at 1.0. I can rev them together, or I can rev them independently. I don't have to update the entire set always at the same time. I can just go do a bug fix to one of the optional packages and deploy that out, and then I just keep the relationship of the different versions correct in the manifest, and will only update the components that are needed. And again, this can be multi-publisher. So that's a great visual way for you to see how the optional packages work in the system. But what would be cool is to actually see it in action. So Andy's got another demo here, and we're going to show you that same HR app, but realistically how it would work in the system.
So as John just described, here we have the HR app. I can double click on that, and it would bring up the app installer again, letting me install it directly. And by default, the HR app comes with two modules here. The first is the time reporting module, where I can say that I'll be absent all of this week for Ignite. And the second is the My Rewards module, where I can see my salary and my bonuses for this year. But since John is a manager, he would need additional capabilities within the HR app. And he can download additional modules from this website. So by clicking on Install HR App, this will bring up the app installer again. And this would download the optional packages for the HR app.
So what's cool here is on the website, he's hosted the app with multiple optional packages. And he used the app installer file. It's what I talked about, what we use for auto updatings. It's the same XML file that can be used for deployment. And it allows him in one click to go and install multiple apps that are part of this related set. So you don't have to install every one of those optional packages one by one. You can actually create the document with the intent, and you can service that up to your users if they're doing any kind of self-service installs, really making it easy for them to get the apps on the device. And almost there. I think I paid my Azure bill.
So once the optional packages have been installed, we see that the HR app is able to load the code and files from the optional packages and light up the two additional modules here. The first is the approvals module, and the second is the employees module.
So that's just a great example of, again, having one common app, going and adding a couple different optional packages that light up new functionality without having to go create different apps. And then you can create this all-in-one experience for your users, making it really easy for them to accomplish the work that they need to do. Cool, thanks, Andy. So when we think about optional packages, I did talk a little bit about code and content and all that. Basically, just have a nice slide here that talk about some design rules and things to think about. So if the functionality is you want to load native code, you have to do a related set. Related set is really just doing that version binding that I was talking about. So if you're loading code, you need to do a related set. If you're not in a related set, if you don't want to do strict versioning, you can only have content. The relationship is exact versioning for loading code. Like I said, it's just loosely coupled the other way. There is an intent declared where the content only says, hey, I need to work with this main app. But that's really the only intent that needs to be declared, no specific versions. App list entry on start. If you're running code, you can have an app list entry, but in some cases, you might just want to add a module that doesn't have a launchable tile. So there's that flexibility that you have there. So if I take the example of Office, Office obviously wants to have Word, Excel, and PowerPoint as an individual tile. But say they just wanted to have their proofing tools maybe as another optional package someday. That doesn't need a tile. It's just runtime stuff that they use. So they could actually declare that as an optional package. And in the manifest, you put app list entry equals none, and it won't show a tile. So you can go and deploy the package, and you don't actually have to have a tile in start. Support for multiple main apps. So one of the things about content only, which is pretty cool, because it's not an exact versioning, you can have content only modules. We've seen this for like media, where you might have like songs or videos or things like that. You can go and deploy that optional package, and multiple apps can take advantage of it. I think of this like templates in an enterprise. You might just have a templates package that you deploy to everyone, and then multiple apps can pick from that templates folder, where it's not code and it's just content that you want to get down. You might change your branding one day. You can update that optional package, and all those templates will go and update, making it really easy to do. Then experiencing, when you are updating in a related set, if you're using the desktop bridge, we do need to shut down the app and relaunch it. just to re-register some of the file system. If it's content only, we don't have to do that. But if you're running in the related set, when you go do an app update or an app install, we have to close the app and reopen it. So it's just something to think about when you're doing some of these deployments. So this does not project as well as I thought it would. This is a nice feature recap slide. We talk about all these different ways you can go and componentize your apps. And this recap slide is actually in our docs.microsoft.com. It's a great way for you to think about the type of functionality you want and then the offering on the way we have to componentize our apps. When we think about breaking up our apps and componentizing them, we know it's not a one-size-fits-all model, so there's a lot of flexibility, whether you're cross-publisher, if you're building for yourself, if you want to use multiple apps, if you want on-demand content. So this is a great way to actually, as you're thinking about componentizing your app, reference what's going to be the best for the experience that you're building. Lastly, there's some links. Like I said earlier, we run a blog that basically I try to release content as soon as it comes out in an insider flight. So as new features are coming out for our packaging and deployment, we go ahead and we put that out on the blog. We're also going to be transitioning most of the blog to docs.microsoft.com. It's just an easier way for you guys to get the official release documentation out there. So you'll probably see a mix of both of those coming out. We talked about streaming install and optional packages. There's 2 great Get Starting articles that'll really walk you through the details of what it takes to go do that, along with some samples on GitHub. And then lastly, the build presentation from last year is a great walkthrough on app services and app extensions. So if you want to see a lot of live demos on those 2, you can actually go rewatch that build session. And a couple of our colleagues, they had a really great presentation that'll kind of walk you through those. And then developer breakout sessions. So there's a bunch of us here this week. Hopefully, you'll take advantage of all the great sessions we have. The core value of Windows 10 apps in the enterprise was yesterday. If you didn't get a chance to go see that, I highly recommend watching it on demand. Likewise, the desktop bridge session that's at 4 p.m., I believe it's in this exact same room as well. It's a great way for you guys to take advantage of all these new Windows 10 deployment and packaging technologies, and they walk through how you can actually take advantage of the desktop bridge with your existing applications. And then a couple more sessions. There's a great one on things you didn't know about UWP, and where was the other one? Oh, and actually building powerful new applications for the enterprise on Windows 10. Stefan and Ginny down there are going to do that session. It's tomorrow, so it'd be a good one to watch. And then some of the theater sessions. And we'll take Q&A. If anyone has questions, if you can just come up to the mics, we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, and then I think we have one question, but while we're getting the question, come on up. Kyle, my colleague here, passed out a bunch of tickets, and I know it's really painful to listen to me talk for about an hour or so, so I have a couple Surface Dials. I'm just going to raffle off here. So I'll get your question, and then I'll raffle off Surface Dial for anyone who stayed and listened to me.
Yeah, are you guys going to be releasing Apex installs of certain packages, say your language packs, so that it can be integrated with anything else that we're doing? So if we're deploying an application that requires the Spanish language pack, instead of us having to do it, will it already be there directly from Microsoft and perhaps for other applications? In other words, is there going to be broad support for, I don't know, maybe .NET and all the applications you release as Apex?
Okay, so the question is there going to be language packs for all the apps that we release as Apex? For the most part, the pre-installed apps are all released, the ones that are already Apex. So Mail, Calendar, People, the store, all those are bundles, and you can go to the Microsoft Store for Business if you sign up for that, and you should be able to just download the packages if you need access to them within your firewall. And then likewise, as any app comes to our store or moves to the Apex packaging format, it is a requirement within Microsoft that we take advantage of the localization and the language packs. I'm not sure of how many languages that we do in the first run of it, but we do make it a requirement to do that breaking up and separation by language pack. All right, so I will take one more question. Yeah, go ahead and talk. It should be good.
Okay, so suppose I download Microsoft Tips, the AppX from the Microsoft Business Store, and then I deploy it via SCCM to Windows 10 machines. If updates come out for the app, does it go out to the native store, or do I have to then rebundle that application and deploy it as an SCCM application again?
So the answer is both. If you take an app from the Microsoft Store for Business and if you deploy it to your end users, that app can receive updates from the store. So if you're internet connected and you enabled the store updates, it'll start servicing itself from the store naturally with all other updates. If you block store updates or you're behind a firewall, you have the ability to pull down the new updates of that app, and then you can redeploy those to those users. Likewise, if users on those same devices are changing their language, if you're set up for store updates, whenever they go into the settings panel and change their language, it'll kick the store agent to go and pull down the new languages and relocalize all the apps that have localization. If you're behind a firewall, there's a bit that SCCM or any management tool can query to say, hey, I need to get these apps updated. And then they can go and repush the apps and only the deltas would be downloaded. Next question.
Question. So we still live in a really Win32 world, and do you see, like, I think we support like one AppX, like a line of business app. Do you see a movement toward AppX, like going back to what the first guy said, more things bundled as AppX? We still have MSIs. That still seems the primary way of installing all these apps. And what do you see as the future of?
So what do I see as the future? I see moving to AppX as the future and where we need to go. It's going to not only just simplify your life and your deployment, it's going to actually give you a lot more return on investment in your enterprise, because you're not going to have to deal with the custom scripting and everything. That's why I was pointing out at 4 o'clock as the desktop bridge session, you can go and take that existing MSI you have, and in a lot of cases you might not need code change, sometimes you do. Typical things just off the top of my head are like hard-coded paths for like app data or something, or maybe just using an old .NET or things you might have to go update, but they're goodness in general, even if you're still running on Windows 7 to go do. And then as you transition out of Windows 7, you just have the one .appx file that you start deploying throughout your enterprise. So I think it's the right step in the direction you're going to go. I think one of the things I tried to call out early in the session, which it was a little subtle, was I like to call it Windows 10 apps and not just UWP, because you can go and take that existing Win32 app and just take advantage of the packaging and deployment. And if you want to stop there, you can. I think there's a great benefits to continuing moving down the UWP road. You'll get performance and runtime benefits, but you can just take your existing app, migrate it over, and get an easy win and simplify your deployment and your app management lifecycle.
How do you manage rollback if things go wrong?
How do we manage rollback if things go wrong? So right now, if you want to go to a previous version, it would be an uninstall and a reinstall. You can also, what some people do is they just take their old app, rev the version in the manifest to a newer version and push that out. We are looking at, in a future release of Windows, a forced rollback. It's not available on the platform today. But you'll get a lot of that with existing MSIs too. MSIs generally only roll forward. You have to uninstall and reinstall. At least with our uninstall and reinstall, it's a lot quicker and cleaner. But we are looking at ways that we can go and do a forced rollback, but that probably won't be for a little while. But if you have your old app and you know it's just a busted thing across your corporation, you can just edit the manifest and take it from version 1.0.0 and maybe you deploy 2. Just go to 2.1 in that and then push that out. And again, we'll take advantage of Delta downloads, so if there wasn't a lot of bits changed, you'll only update that. You don't have to rip and replace the app off the device.